welcome back.
Thanks very much.
No worries at all. Good to see you. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague now.
Yeah.
Listen very careful to what she's got to say.
Yeah.
Right, James, you're going to be arrested. A warrant being issued at Westminster Magistrates Court for your arrest for the following offences: conspiracy to murder, conspiracy to supply Class 8 untold drugs, and conspiracy to So you do have to say anything that may harm defences. Do not mention what questions that you may let you lie in court and statements given in evidence. The time is 14:09. You understand that you're arrested?
Yes.
Okay, in which case, get moving.
Somewhere in England. Summer 2020. A man is going about his day. He doesn't know it yet. But two people have already decided he needs to die. Not in a heated moment. Not out of anger. It was a business decision. They had a hitman lined up. £100,000 agreed. Guns sourced. Up to 3 of them. A getaway car arranged. An exit route planned. And in their own messages, they described the contract as a dream job for a killer. The target was a rival drug courier. He was sitting on 80 kilograms of cocaine they wanted, and to these two men, killing him was simply cleaner than leaving someone alive who could talk. Now here's what makes this interesting. The men behind this plan weren't operating out of some basement. There was no street corner, no local crew. One of them was in a penthouse in Dubai. Bugatti in the garage, private jet on standby. The other was at home in Surrey. Father of 6, quiet street, neighbors who had no idea. And they were running all of it. The cocaine, the murder plot, the money. Through an encrypted phone that tens of thousands of serious criminals across Europe were using at the same time. A platform that, as far as anyone in that world was concerned, was completely unreadable by any government on Earth. Here's what none of them knew. It had already been hacked. 3 months earlier. French intelligence, silent, patient, watching in real time. Every message these two men sent, read. Every shipment they planned, logged. Every word of that murder conspiracy, recorded. The man they wanted dead never even knew how close it came. And the two men who planned it had no idea they were already finished. This is the story of how one of Britain's most sophisticated drug operations got built, and exactly how one compromised phone brought the whole thing down. So who exactly are James Harding and Jayes Kharouti? Because neither of them fits the obvious picture. James Harding grew up in Alton, a quiet market town in Hampshire. As a teenager, he went through reconstructive facial surgery. His legal team raised it during sentencing, part of a difficult early life. Whatever that period involved, it didn't hold him back. By his 20s, he was already running operations. His first major conviction was for leading a Class B drug importation ring, methcathinone. He wasn't a foot soldier. He was in charge. The sentence? Just under 10 years. He served it and walked out around 2016. Most people make a different choice at that point. Harding didn't. Within a few years, he had moved from Class B to Class A, from domestic to international, from operating inside the UK to running everything remotely from the UAE. By 2020, while the rest of the world was locked down, he was in Dubai, driving a Bugatti Chiron, chartering private jets, staying in 5-star hotels, living entirely off cocaine profits. He never touched the drugs, never handled the cash. He didn't need to. Now Jayes Kharouti, he's a completely different picture. 39 years old, father of 6 children, ages 3 to 16 at the time of sentencing. Lives in Epsom, Surrey. A few minor drug supply convictions over the years, but nothing that flags serious organized crime. No violence on his record. Nothing that would make you look twice. That was the point. Where Harding was the name at the top, Kharouti was everything underneath. UK distribution, logistics, moving product, coordinating couriers, keeping the supply chain running day to day while his boss operated from another continent. He spent some time in Dubai with Harding, but came back to the UK family, the pandemic. He was more useful on the ground anyway. He never directly touched drugs or cash, kept himself clean on paper, but his bank records told a different story. Over £1 million in linked transfers. In under a month. Harding was the vision. Kharouti was the operation. One was in a penthouse overlooking Dubai. The other was in a suburb in Surrey. Together they were unstoppable, or so they thought. To understand how Harding and Kharouti operated so freely for so long, you need to understand the tool that made them feel untouchable. EncroChat. Here's what it was. A private, encrypted messaging platform. Purpose-built for communication that couldn't be traced. The handsets had no camera, no GPS, no standard apps. You couldn't make a regular phone call on it. It did one thing, sent encrypted messages, and it did that on a network that law enforcement, at least for a while, genuinely could not penetrate. No real names, no phone numbers, just handles. And the people using it weren't activists or journalists worried about surveillance. The user base was, almost exclusively, serious organized criminals, drug traffickers, weapons dealers, contract killers, people for whom getting intercepted wasn't an inconvenience. It was a life sentence. By 2020, EncroChat had around 60,000 users worldwide. Roughly half of them were in Europe. Harding's handle was TheTopsKing. Kharouti used two, Besttops and Topsybricks. And like everyone else on the platform, they believed the same thing, that no government could touch it. They were wrong. There's one more detail worth noting here. Around this same period, both Harding and Kharouti received what are called Osman warnings. These are formal, official notifications issued by police when they have credible intelligence that someone's life is at risk. You receive one when law enforcement believes someone is planning to harm you. Both men got one. Both men ignored it, which tells you something about how they viewed their own position, and how seriously they took the idea that anyone could touch them. The plot never happened. On June 13th, 2020, EncroChat users across Europe received a message, a warning. The platform had been compromised, shut everything down. Thousands of criminals went dark simultaneously. Harding and Kharouti stopped communicating through the platform. But by then, French and Dutch intelligence had what they needed. Weeks of messages, 50 planned shipments, a fully documented murder conspiracy, and a rival courier who, at that moment, had no idea how close he had come. A man is alive today because a hacker in France cracked a phone in time. The Metropolitan Police, working alongside the National Crime Agency and European partners, had millions of messages to work through. The job now was connecting handles to people. For TheTopsKing, it didn't take long. Harding had been careless. His EncroChat phone had selfies on it, images that placed him in specific locations at specific times, GPS data that matched his movements, details that cross-referenced with what investigators already knew built an identification that was difficult to argue against. TheTopsKing was James Harding. The evidence was there. But by the time arrest warrants were being prepared, Harding was gone. He'd left Dubai, moving, staying ahead of whatever he thought was coming. Late 2021. Geneva, Switzerland. A private jet on the tarmac. Anti-terror officers moved in. Harding was on board. He was pulled off the aircraft. He was extradited to the UK in 2022. Kharouti took a different route. He fled to Turkey. And once there, he fought extradition, using every legal avenue available to delay being brought back. It worked for a while. He wasn't returned to the UK until 2024, nearly 4 years after EncroChat collapsed. Between the two of them, the investigation spanned 3 countries, 2 extraditions, and the better part of 4 years. The Met described it as one of the largest EncroChat cases ever handled, and it was far from the only one. Across Europe, the same data that caught Harding and Kharouti was being used to dismantle networks in France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Spain. Thousands of arrests, hundreds of prosecutions, an entire criminal ecosystem exposed by a single platform breach. But for the 2 men at the center of this case, the real reckoning was still ahead. The trial opened at the Old Bailey in April 2025. Kharouti had already made his decision. In November 2024, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to import cocaine, a 30% sentencing discount in exchange for the admission. He still faced the murder conspiracy charge, but on the drugs count, he wasn't fighting it. Harding was fighting everything. He claimed that the TheTopsKing messages weren't his. They belonged, he said, to a secret male lover, a man he had been in a relationship with privately, a man who, he also claimed, was the biological father of a child Harding had been raising as his own. It was a significant claim, and it required proof. DNA tests were ordered. They came back negative. The story fell apart entirely, but Harding didn't stop there. During the proceedings, it emerged that he had allegedly fabricated over 800 messages on a recovered phone, manufactured evidence constructed to support his defense. The cost of that effort, legal teams suggested, potentially ran into the millions. It didn't work. On June 24, 2025, the verdicts came in. Both men convicted of conspiracy to murder. 2 days later, June 26, 2025, the Old Bailey. Judge Anthony Leonard KC looked at both men and reached the same conclusion for each of them. Dangerous offenders, ongoing risk of serious harm to the public. James Harding, life imprisonment. Minimum term, 32 years. Jayes Kharouti, life imprisonment. Minimum term, 26 years. Neither will be considered for release until those minimums are served. And even then, release is not guaranteed. The judge didn't just consider the scale of the cocaine operation, though that alone was extraordinary. He considered the murder plot, the planning, the guns, the hitman, the coded language in the messages, the complete absence of hesitation. These weren't men who stumbled into violence. They moved toward it deliberately, practically, as a business decision. That, more than anything, is what drove the sentences. Harding and Kharouti spent years building something they believed technology had made permanent. The encrypted phones, the handles, the distance, the careful structure designed to keep them invisible and untouchable. In the end, it was that same technology, those same phones, those same messages, that put them in front of a judge at the Old Bailey and took the next 3 decades of their lives. They built an empire on the belief that they couldn't be seen. They were wrong about that from the start. If you found this case worth your time, subscribe and hit the bell. Every week we cover stories like this one. The full outline and sources for this video are in the description below. Thanks for watching,